Turns out you need to score goals to win games. Minnesota Wild shut out for the second consecutive game, 3-0. The effort was better, but it still leads to another loss. And we're going to have a nice long talk tonight about this roster because pretty clear that this team has just hit their talent ceiling.
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Minnesota Wild lose tonight by a score of 3-0, and they didn't get walked off the ice like they did against Ottawa, but at the same time, still is the same results, just feeble offense and a large amount of players that are just existing and not really giving you much of anything in terms of any semblance of scoring. Let's just look at some of the particulars here tonight. I'll throw the recap graphic back up and we'll talk it through. 34 shots on goal tonight, which has to be near a season high for the Minnesota Wild. Just not a ton of quality chances, as we'll talk about. The Wild 0 for 4 on the power play. They did hold the Bruins scoreless in the power play department on their end, but there's so much chasing going on in the power play and so much inability to get things set up in the offensive zone. It really is just, at this point, throwing minutes away. And, I don't know what the expectation is, because you have a lot of guys that just really have no business being in any sort of scoring capacity that are playing major roles for you. And at some point you just hit the talent ceiling, and if you're not getting scoring from the number one line with this team, you're not getting scoring. It's as simple as that. And the defense can lock in to a point, but if you are expecting to win every game 1-0, that's a lot of pressure to put on a defense and a goalie and all of the other defensive aspects for this team. If you can't score even, if you can't get to even an average number of goals, which is 3, if you can't get to an average number of goals, you're just putting so much pressure on your defense and your goalie play. It's hard to ask. Marcus Foligno is not an impact scorer. Freddie Gaudreau's not an impact scorer. Marcus Johansson's not an impact scorer. Murat Huznadinov's not an impact scorer. Jakub Lauko's not an impact scorer. Devin Shore's not an impact scorer. Yakov Trenin's not an impact scorer. And until you get the ability to find those players through the draft or wherever, until they get put down into more natural fits for them, these types of things happen. And it's, we need to, I think, have an honest conversation about what this season is for this Minnesota Wild team as well. But we'll get there. Because good Lord, the comment section is just tonight. The Boston Bruins generated 2.63 expected goals. So defense played okay. 2.6 is on the high mark in terms of expected goals that we've seen from this team lately. So it played okay, and marc-andre Fleury only gave up the 2 goals. That should be enough to win you games. But on the offensive side, you generated 3.16 expected goals, but let's look at the attempts. There were 51 unblocked shot attempts for the Minnesota Wild tonight. 40 of them were low danger. So again, we find ourselves in this situation where this offense just is not able to generate any sort of extended looks, one and dones, or perimeter shots. Those don't win you games. Like, those are not going to win you games. Now, they did get, I think it was 6 medium danger and 5 high danger. But if you're only generating those levels, that's making it way easier. Making it way easier for the goalie to come away with saves. Let's look at the heat map. Heat map is interesting, to say the least. But let's just look at the heat map for where the shots came from here this evening. So Minnesota Wild are on the left side, and for those listening to the audio version of this, there's a large concentration of shots right in front of the net. Those are all saves by Jeremy Swayman. So in those instances, those shots that came right in front, Swayman made the save on those. But look at how many of these happened from way outside the faceoff circle. One and dones. You get a perimeter shot, the goalie makes the save, you go to the faceoff circle and lose, and you're out of the zone. You have to do a better job of sustaining presence in the offensive zone if you want to score goals. And guess what? That requires effort. If you don't get to the net, it's very hard to score. That's as simple as it is. Like, we don't need to make it super complicated. Look at the Boston shots on the other side. A lot of shots from the face-off circles and in this triangle. They got a goal from one of the face-off circles and a goal right in front of the net. That's what you want your heat map to more look like. These pockets outside the face-off circle, not great. Not great at all. So, look, I'm not going to try to take credit for where this team is at. I think if we're all just honest with ourselves, this is a team that I didn't expect them to do anything this year. I expected them to be fighting for a wild card spot because it is largely the same roster as last year. And last year's roster had a devoid of scoring talent. To be fair, $14 million that you don't have at your disposal, that can get you some scoring talent. So I honestly, I'm not surprised that playing players in higher roles than they should be played has led to a lot of scoring issues for this Minnesota Wild team. I mean, we continue to talk about it. So let's talk about it again here tonight. Marcus Johansson had 1 shot attempt. He's playing second line minutes. Like, I don't get it. But also, who are you paying to put in that spot right now? Nobody. You don't have money to be able to put anybody else in that spot. So it should be Liam Ogren. I agree there. But for whatever reason, it isn't. Freddie Gaudreau playing third line minutes. Marcus Foligno playing third line minutes. If your second line isn't scoring, the trickle down goes to everybody. if your first line isn't scoring, the trickle down goes to everybody. This is to kind of go with the flip side of this coin. Not having Kirill Kaprizov in the lineup is exposing just how feeble the underbelly of this team is. And I kind of got into it with somebody on Twitter who said you should be frightened that this is going to lead to Kirill Kaprizov saying, "I'm out. I can't deal with this franchise." I'm not going to go to that level, but what I will tell you is that if this ends up being a team that, slides down into a wild card spot and ends up on the outs, there are going to be some wholesale changes. And it's not going to be like, I know the one that just gets all of the conversation is Marco Rossi. It's going to require some changes. And that's going to require some tough conversations with guys that aren't giving you enough right now, which is a large portion of this roster. Because at the end of the day, keeping Kirill Kaprizov is the number one thing that this franchise is trying to do. And it's time to make a move crowd. It's time to go out and get somebody. What are you going to do? You don't have any money. You would have to have a team take half and a broker team take half. And you can't afford to dip into the Kaprizov LTIR when he gets put there, because you have to come back down. And you're hamstrung at this point, but that's not a bad thing. It just further points to the weaknesses of this team. There's a good, the defense. This team has a good defense. The goaltending has largely been good this year. The offense has to be fixed. And another subpar season that leads to not making the playoffs is going to be unacceptable for Craig Leopold, and it's going to lead to changes. I don't think they're going to sell at the deadline. I think the Wild are just going to say, there's really not much we can do. And the team knows it. This is your bed. Make it or do something about it. The mantra for this team all season has been choose your hard. Choose what level of effort you bring. This team has played very well when the effort level is high, when players are willing to risk and to give the extra that is required to win games. When they don't, when they cut corners, when they don't go into the corners to battle for pucks, they lose games. So this is 100% on the team. John Hines put a winning formula together. John Hines was given a roster that has some very serious flaws, and he has put them in a pretty good... He is, considering what he has, he had the team playing pretty well up until a few weeks ago. But at some point, there's a limit. And we're seeing the limits of where this team is at with the money they have available and the money they don't. So is it frustrating? Of course. This team is just, it's a hard watch right now. I'm still mad about the game against Ottawa. It was a better effort tonight, but it's still not enough. It's still not really anywhere where it needs to be. And it's kind of head scratching to me, considering you see games against teams like the Colorado Avalanche, for example, a game in which the Wild had fewer healthy players than they do right now, and 100% effort, full effort, and they go and they win that game. The Montreal game, full effort for Marc-Andre Fleury to go win that game. The effort level just fluctuates. And I get it, because we all go through it. Think about a point at which you in your everyday job have just not had it. You go in and you just have not had it. And don't tell me, no, I've given 100% effort to my job every single day that I've worked it. No, you haven't. It happens to everybody. It just depends on all of the extenuating circumstances that go into daily life. But that doesn't make it any less frustrating. It feels like this was a good opportunity to bounce back, and the team just didn't capitalize on it. It's a very beatable Boston team. Very beatable Boston team. And couldn't crack them. Couldn't crack them tonight. So similar to what happened against the Ottawa Senators, like you deserve, in most cases, you deserve the fate you get for the effort you put in. And the effort was better tonight, but it's just not there yet. So I don't know. I have been far more frustrated by other games this year. And at this point, and maybe this is me starting the 7, whatever it is. Maybe this is just me hitting the acceptance phase, but it looks like a team that was playing far above its talent level early on. So that's a credit to John Hines for being able to milk as much out of this team as he has. And things have settled down to earth. So I don't know. We've got a ripe comment section here tonight, so I want to dive into all of that. But again, the particulars here tonight. Nobody scored, so there's no points. Matt Boldy had the team high in shots on goal with 6. Marcus Foligno had 6 hits tonight and 3 shots on 6 attempts. Defensively, Brock Faber played 25 minutes tonight. So again, because the team was trailing, you have high minute totals for your top guys. Fourth line played under 10 minutes tonight for the most part. If you don't get contributions from your top guys and your bottom guys don't score, you're not gonna. It's hard to win games. But let's get to the comments, because there's a wide range of things in the comments, from trade Matt Boldy, he's worthless, to there's something going on in the locker room. There clearly is a rift on this team. So we have a lot to get to here tonight in the comments. So we'll get to that after a commercial break. You're listening to another Locked On Wild postcast. Wild fall tonight by a score of 3-0. More on the way after this. Tonight's Locked On Wild postcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that is the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Oh, and for those who are curious, Kansas City Chiefs are 1.5-point favorites heading into the Super Bowl. So file that away for later and bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Tonight's Locked On Wild postcast is also brought to you by Game Time. Looking for tickets to your next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sporting event, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Game Time Picks, it is even easier than ever. Let me tell you how this works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all of the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. And the best part, you are covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Minnesota Wild fall by a score of 3-0. And I want to try a new exercise here. On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your level of concern at this point for the Minnesota Wild? Scale of 1 to 10. And why? Give me your 1 through 10 and why you feel that way. Me right now, I'm at about a 5, probably a 5.5. Again, it's pretty easy to pinpoint what is currently ailing this team. The defense played fine tonight. The goaltending was fine tonight, but it's all magnified when the offense doesn't score. Every goal given up is magnified. Every penalty kill is magnified. Every turnover in the offensive zone is magnified. If you don't score goals, guess what? You're not going to win a hockey game. We got a couple of 5s right off the bat. Jeremy's at a 5. Ben is at a 5. Hoptics is at a 5 as well. Kaprizov and the goaltending propped the team up so much the first part of the season. Accurate. Urban is at a 3, essentially where we expected, and a lot of injuries along the way. Future is bright. This isn't a cup run year. Amanda's at a 5. 1, this team is playing way better than we all thought. 3, they're in the middle of the rebuild on the fly. 2, because I didn't expect them to even be in contention for the playoffs. Expected bottom feeders. 7 to 8, it's starting to become repetition and it's getting more frequent. It's probably a 5 when I think of the situation they're in, but sick and tired of the constant mediocrity. Lots of 5s. 5 seems to be the common denominator. Mike's at a 3. Bob is at a 4. Just tank the rest of the way. Going to benefit more than injury after injury. 4, 7. Vets have let the team down. 3, team wasn't a serious contender. Like, I'll put myself in the spotlight for a little bit. It was a fun start to the season, but again, I'm going to go back to the start of the year. in which any opportunity I got, I just didn't think that this was going to be a team that was going to do any more than fight for a wild card spot. Because Dallas, because Colorado, because Winnipeg. It was a fun start to the year. It was fun to see this team shake off last year. But it's basically the same team as last year. And those warts still exist. The penalty kill is still mostly bad. And guess what? You elevate particular guys into top 6 spots. They're not top 6 players. They're bottom 6 guys. If you had a couple of other places, if you had a couple of other players in the top 6 that are actually top 6 players, this looks way different. Marcus Johansson at this point is a placeholder. It's infuriating that he continues to get the opportunities there. I understand. But he's a placeholder. Now, I will change my tune if he ends up deciding, if Bill Guerin ends up deciding that Marcus Johansson needs to be part of the long-term plans. I'll change my tune. But at this point, he's a placeholder. He's done at the end of the season, and that roster spot is open to somebody else who is actually going to be a top 6 player. I like, another good conversation piece. And I still think Joel Eriksson Ek is trying to gut it out through a pretty substantial injury. How do we feel about Joel Eriksson Ek as a top 6 center? He's probably more of a middle 6 guy. He played with Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Boldy, which led to him being a 30-goal guy. But guess what? There's another player on the roster that did the same thing. Ryan Hartman. He turned into a 30-goal scorer because turns out Kirill Kaprizov can elevate quite a bit. Now, Marco Rossi is a bona fide, legitimate top 6 guy. So you found that. You found that out. I know it's frustrating to see Rossi continue to play third-line minutes, but I'll say what I said with Alex yesterday. It doesn't matter who's playing center where if you don't have top 6 wings on either side. It's going to be a mess either way. So Marco Rossi, I think, is a bona fide top 6 guy, but you still are devoid of one top 6 center. So you are missing a top 6 wing and a top 6 center at this point. And if you find those guys, if you're able to get those guys in, if it's whether it be Danila Yurov or somebody else, if you get a top 6 player that's actually a top 6 guy in that spot, this looks completely different. The defense is mostly solidified. Brodin, Spurgeon, Faber, Middleton. That's a very solid top 4. Zach Bogosian is a placeholder. John Merrill is a placeholder. You've got Zeev Boyum. You've got David Jiricek to fill those spots. Placeholder guys. Merrill's not going to be on the roster next year. If he is, I'll change my tune. But until Bill Guerin completely loses his mind and is like, no, we need to lock these guys in long term, these are placeholder guys until there are young players that are ready. I believe the locker room is not right. The guys with the A and the C on their sweaters are not leading the way or holding guys accountable. That's a fair... that's a fair question, Big Ticket KG, because Jared Spurgeon is just not that guy. Jared Spurgeon is just not that type of player. He's not a vocal leader. Brock Faber is, and I made this comment the other night. It seems interesting that it's Brock Faber and Matt Zuccarello who seemingly are always talking to the media after games. as opposed to Spurgeon or others. Marcus Foligno does a fair amount of it too. There will come a time where that captaincy will be handed to somebody else. And again, looking down the road, Brock Faber is clearly going to be that guy. He already could be that guy, and he's barely started his NHL career, and he already has become that type of player. That's why I keep looking down the road for this team and saying, things are not there isn't just this dark doom and gloom cloud over this franchise going forward. They have the pieces, they have the makings of a solid roster. They just need to add to it. They need to figure out where they're at and what they need to further supplant this roster. There will be a fair amount of questioning going on in the offseason leading into next year as to what the goalie situation looks like. But guess what? All the people that were saying you need to trade Philip Gustafsson and have Marc-Andre Fleury and Jesper Wallstedt be your goalie tandem this whole season, that would not have been the correct call. Jesper's still young. I know his numbers look awful. I'm really not worried. Because part of learning is failing. Part of learning how to cut it. Some point you just get thrown in the deep end of the pool and you just have to learn how to swim. So the fact that Jesper is struggling at the AHL level, he won't be there next year. And it's not a great team in front of him. Rossi is a borderline top 6. He is obviously here on a team void of any C's with any playmaking skills at all. Far too many people here thinking Rossi is the second coming. Something behind the scenes got to Jesper this year. Get an apartment here, and he's down in Iowa all year. That's rough. Yeah, I think that whole situation was not handled the best, but that's a testament to, let's give some love to Marc-Andre Fleury here tonight. He battled out. He balled out. Offense did him no favors, but he continues to, as you heard in the February schedule breakdown, player of the month for January. He absolutely balled out, and he continues to ball out this year. You want to talk about another placeholder? He won't be on the roster next year. So a lot of the play the kids arguments will be sorted out next season. Jesper's going to be up here. Zeev Boyum will be up here. David Juracek will be up here. Danila Yurov will be here. Liam Ogren will be here. The reason that teams, by and large, don't play young players as much as they do is to avoid them getting the bust label. And because you get more of a flatline performance from veterans as opposed to the highs and lows of young players. Because young players, if they don't get it right away, they play timidly. They play afraid to make mistakes, which leads to them not making plays that they should. And you as a coach can say all you want, just play your game, just focus on your game, don't worry about the mistakes. But they still do it. How does an Iowa Wild team go from 2 years ago making a legit playoff run to getting 2-0'd by the Ice Hogs in their play-in run and can't even win now. Well, I think the coach has a little something to do with it, but that's all I'm going to say there. So then, by what you're saying about the placeholders, does give a glimmer of hope. It all comes down to BG. He's acting like a rookie GM. No, you know what? You know what would be Billy acting foolish is what is currently going on in New York. And I know people hate this roster to no end. But have you seen those Islanders books lately? And what is potential to happen is that now that the New York Islanders have started to win a few hockey games, they could make a few other problematic moves. Bo Horvat is making $8.5 million until the 2031 season. Matt Barzal is signed to the exact same deal. He's making $9.15. Like their books are hideous. The New York Rangers books are hideous. These teams try to lock in these players for far too much money. And like if you go to the offseason, 2025-2026 offseason, Ryan Hartman has a 15-team no trade. Freddie Gaudreau has a 15-team no trade. Yakov Trenin has no trade protection. Jared Spurgeon has a 10-team no trade. Jonas Brodin has no trade protection. Zach Bogosian has no trade protection. And then, of course, you can ask. You could ask and see if a guy is willing to waive. I know it seems like this situation, like this roster is boxed in. But I can tell you what is not going to happen. If this team falters and misses the playoffs, Craig Leopold is not going to let Bill Guerin walk this thing back again. It's not going to happen. There are going to be moves made in the offseason. And, you know, this Hartman situation is going to be an interesting one because he has now put the team in a real bind. And Marcus Johansson and Marcus Foligno got kind of banged up tonight. They both came back in the game. But if you lose a player at any point during these next 9 games, that's all on Ryan Hartman. And he's going to have to wear that, just like he had to wear watching the team, watching them get scored on 3 times. I would agree normally, Ace, but as many teams as there are that try to hang on, to glimmers of hope, there are a lot of teams that are going to have to get to the cap floor coming into these next few years. Exhibit A, the Anaheim Ducks, who are always looking for a little bit of sandpaper for their youthful lineup. They currently have $45 million in cap space. They're projected to have $78 million in cap space at the deadline. They took on the entirety of the Jacob Trouba contract like it's nothing. So there is no such thing. There's no such thing as an immovable contract. Exhibit A, Jacob Trouba. Ducks just said, we'll take the whole thing. We don't care. The Wild are only 7 points ahead of the last wild card spot. That's 3.5 games if you're counting. Making the playoffs would be a huge accomplishment at this point. And if you look at what continues to happen, Winnipeg is leading Carolina right now 3-0. Boy, I need to eat massive crow for continuing to doubt the Winnipeg Jets this year. And you know why the Winnipeg Jets are having such a substantially better season than the Minnesota Wild? Is because they actually have depth scoring. They have a third line that is capable of giving you goals here and there. Not a ton of goals, but just enough to give you a threat of scoring. Like, you look up and down their lineup. They've got 2 30-goal scorers right now. Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele. Gabe Vilardi has 22. Those are the only players that they have that are above 20. But Nikolai Ehlers has 16. Cole Perfetti has 11. Vladislav Nemetsnikov has 10. Nino Niederreiter has 13. Adam Lowry has 11. You've got 2 defensemen in Josh Morrissey and Neil Pionk with 7 apiece. Alex Iafallo, Mason Appleton, they've got 7 apiece. Like, I know Connor Hellebuck covers up a lot of warts if a team has any, but the Winnipeg Jets are dominating the special teams right now. They're dominating the special teams. They are scoring a ton of goals regardless. I mean, they are number 1 in the league on the power play. But they are also, you don't have to be top 10 in the penalty kill. You just have to have one that can get you a stop every now and again. They're 16th in the penalty kill right now at 79%. You just have to be able to get stops periodically. And the Minnesota Wild are second to last right now. Second to the Detroit Red Wings by 0.6%. And on the power play side, they're 23rd. You can't rely on 5-on-5 scoring exclusively. You just can't. And they have tried to do that now for 4 years. And look where that got us. We have 4 goal scorers, 7 grit guys, and Ek somewhere in the middle. If we removed the cap space for this year, would fans want Cousins to come in and be the future 1C? What would we be willing to give up? So the only thing with Mr. Cousins is I believe he is in the midst of a pretty substantial drop, like a massive drop in production. So 2 years ago, he had 31 goals. That was the Don Granato season where they just scored a ton of goals. Tage Thompson had 47, I think. He had 31. He dropped to 18 last year. Now he's at 10 so far this year. You know what I want? Here's what I want. And it very well could be this. The fact that Buffalo is just a disaster of a team. It very well could be. And he's 6'3", 194. You know what? Why not? Why not? I'd rather take a chance on a young guy than I would an aging vet. He's got size. He's got some beef to him. $7.1 million in this day and age. It's not a ton. Honestly, like, I have thought about this, and it seems that that's going to be that's going to be that's going to be kind of the course correction for Buffalo. Is they're going to trade away some of their young skill and try to add a little. That's going to be the course correction for them. So maybe you offload a little bit of your for some skill. I think Rossi's absolutely going to be right around a 7 points. Like, I think a good blueprint for a Rossi deal is what Matty Beniers got, which was 7 years, I think 50 million, 50-ish million. I think that's a great blueprint for what Rossi should get. And people are worried about. There's just so much worry in any article, many podcasts. This is why I've stayed out of it so much. It's everywhere. There's so much worry about Marco Rossi not being on the team next year, not being re-signed, not this, not that. You know what it is? Somebody on Twitter a long time ago, we were discussing this very thing. The reason that Marco Rossi has not been signed right now is because the Wilds want to get the Kaprizov deal done first. And to be fair, that's exactly how they should play it. You don't necessarily have to do a deal with Rossi this summer. I know the arbitration route is a scary proposition. You could absolutely go the arbitration route with Marco Rossi. You wouldn't be able to do it again, but that would buy you time to get Kaprizov's deal done first and then see what you have left for Marco Rossi. Honestly, the fact that the Wild is expected to, the cap is expected to go up by more than we thought, that benefits the Wild. So that gives you more money to work with for both of these. Bill Guerin may be arrogant. He's not an idiot. Marco Rossi is easily the hardest working player on the team. And he's not just gonna give that away he's not gonna bring Phil Kessel in to fill that spot. So I don't know. I'll let all the other shows and all the other articles continue to talk about the Rossi situation. I'm finding more and more that it's just so much easier for me from a mental capacity to just react to things as opposed to trying to speculate how they're going to play out. Like, it's just pick your battles. Pick your battles is, I think, becoming my new mantra. Call me crazy. I'm not scared to lose Boldy if we can sign Besser. That would unlock a massive trade if we can land a Besser. Well, I'll say it again. I think he is going to be the top target in free agency for the Minnesota Wild, because that Vancouver team, now that they have ripped the Band-Aid off and traded JT Miller, and it turns out maybe Elias Pettersson was the problem, Brock Besser's looking at that and thinking, do I want to re-up here with this team in all sorts of drama? I wouldn't want to. I would look to greener pastures. the fact of the matter is, it seems like the one thing that Minnesota has going for them is that, except for Phil Kessel, now Phil Kessel wasn't a like one of us Minnesota guy. He just went to the U. It seems like by and large, all of the players that are from Minnesota end up or want to play for the Wild at some point during their career. So maybe this is the point at which Brock Boeser says, I feel like Vancouver is doing this, and looking ahead, it looks like Minnesota is kind of on the up and up. The other part about having all of those rookies in, they're cheap. If you could get ELCs for Yurov, Boyum, Juracek, Jesper's only making 2.2. If you can get all those guys in the lineup, that's money that you have to spend elsewhere. That's money that you can afford to spend on actual bona fide top 6 players. Having Zucchi, Boldy, and a Boeser would clog up the top 6. Yurov and Ogren don't have room in the top 6. Well, if you end up getting Brock Boeser and you end up still being able to put Liam Ogren and Danil Yurov on the roster, I mean, let me talk a little bit about what we've seen from Marat Huznadinov here recently. He's got some sneaky skill to him. And I think it just took a little bit of a wake-up call to kind of get him going again. But if you have your top 6 full out, like you got Kirill Kaprizov, Marco Rossi, Matt Zuccarello, you got Matt Boldy, you've got Joel Eriksson Ek, and you've got Brock Boeser as your top 6. Put Yurov and Ogren in the lineup. That would not be a bad third line. Like, skill wins out. And then you can still do your bowling ball fourth line. You can still bowling ball your way through games with Trenton and whoever else. Seven straight wins for the Winnipeg Jets, and Connor Hellebuck did not play tonight. Eric Comrie in net. That's a wagon. Roster spots is going to be questions if you don't trade some of the dead weights. Well, there's plenty to choose from. Marcus Johansson won't be on the roster next year. Jakub Lauko may or may not. Somebody's going to get moved. The whole reason that these guys were signed was placeholders for these other prospects. So call me naive, but I like to think that if a situation presents itself where Danila Yurov and Liam Ogren are ready to perform on this team, call me naive, but I feel like Bill Guerin at that point would have a situation on his hands, would have a choice on his hands that he would have to make. And look, If he would pick a veteran at that point, I'll rip him to the end of time. But he said it before this season started. He said players are going to need to step up. If they don't, then we're going to make tough choices. Let's just bookmark this right now. Let's just bookmark this on February 4th. And I will guarantee you that one of these deadweight players will not be on the team next year. I'll guarantee that. By the time the season starts next year, one of those guys will not be on the roster. Whether it be Hartman or Gaudreau or Trent or who am I missing? And I'm not talking about the likes of Johansson and Merrill because they won't be on the roster next year. I'm talking about one of the others. Maybe it ends up being Ryan Hartman because of this. I'm just throwing it out there. One of those guys is not going to be on the roster next year. And not the low-hanging fruit. There will be a tough choice. There will be a tough choice that has to be made. And I am putting my faith in Bill Guerin to do it. If he doesn't, then he's getting an earful. Because if this Wild team wants to take the next step to be able to compete with the big dogs and put themselves in legitimate conversations, they need to up the scoring. And we have now seen over the last 4 years, we have now seen that the usual cast of characters, they're not capable of doing it. So we'll see, Glenn. We'll see who's right. If I'm not right, you're gonna get credit for me letting my guard down and placing my faith in the wrong place. Time will tell. The Carolina Hurricanes are in town on Thursday. Now that the Wild have, for some reason, started to lose on the road, now they get to go to the comforts of home, which is not a statement that we have uttered really at any point this year because the Wild are under 500 at home. And you're going to get a Carolina team that is probably upset at how the last game against the Wild went and how their game against the Jets went. And it's going to take a full effort to avoid falling to 31-24. It's going to take a full effort, full plate, big dog effort, junkyard dog effort from this Minnesota Wild team to stay 2 points ahead of Colorado, who's playing Vancouver tonight. So by the time we wake up tomorrow, we could be tied with Colorado and on the in the wild card spot. And honestly, that's probably not a bad thing. Because I think this team has gotten a little too accustomed to seeing themselves in the top three in the division. And seeing themselves drop down to fighting it out amongst the rest of the pack. Might not be the worst thing. Expect to lose a bunch in the next 10 games. I am expecting that the Wild will lose every single game the rest of the season. We need the break bad. I need the break. I need the break worse than the team does. I'm telling you that right now. I need the break worse than the team does. There'll still be, don't worry, Diane, there'll still be episodes. There'll still be episodes done on the break. Honestly, I'm probably going to do some report cards over the 2 weeks. I think that's way overdue for the performance we've seen from this team. It might be time for a little tough love. I know we've been pretty nice. I've been pretty glass half full, optimistic for most of the season. It might be time for a little tough love for the remainder of February. So maybe we'll pull that out of the hat. Oh God. No, Trevor. I can't do that again. That was the bane of my existence to track that for a whole season. The best part about it, I guess, though, was that I heard it mentioned. Somebody in here floated that to PA on KFan. I heard it floated to Paul Allen on KFan. And I could not have been more proud, because I'm like, whoever that was that did that, they got it from Locked On Wild. That's how you know. That's how you know you made it. I think with that, I'm going to I think it's a good spot to leave it for tonight. We will have a postcast for you on Thursday as well. However that game goes. Like we said, like I said, we'll continue to do the postcast. If the games get to be embarrassing, maybe we cut it, but at this point, as long as the games are competitive, like, we just hop in, we talk about it, pinpoint the fact that the team can't score any goals, and we'll figure out the rest of the problems as well. But appreciate everybody tuning in here tonight. We'll have an episode out for you probably after lunch. I just like, especially with these postcasts and especially with my schedule, to just wait until after practice has happened in case there's any news that gets missed or dropped. So we'll probably have one for you shortly after lunch, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what I'm feeling, and maybe I'll dive into some hideous offensive numbers. That sounds like fun. Make sure to hit the like button before you head out here for the night, and enjoy your night. Minnesota Wild, unfortunately, get shut out for the second straight game. 3-0 in Boston. And we'll catch you for an episode tomorrow. We've got you covered all week long, right here on Locked On Wild.